Welcome to the Fine Cooking Podcast, the show for people who love to cook. I'm Kathy Kingsley, your host. Each episode will be bringing the pages of Fine Cooking magazine to life through our conversations with a mix of guests, our editors, contributors, cookbook authors, food writers, chefs, and bakers. We'll dive into a topic and then take time at the end of every show to answer some of your questions. On today's episode, we'll be talking all about cast iron. Joining me today are editors Sarah Breckenridge, Chris Hulk, and Diana Andrews. Let's start with a brief roundtable discussion of what we've eaten or cooked lately. We're always experimenting as cooks, so it's interesting to hear everyone's insights. So let's just go around and hear from all our editors. Who wants to kick it off? Diana, how about you?
Oh, well, I came into this podcast reeking today, and everyone thought I was bringing this
Mexican
scent
food.
of Mexican food.
Smelled like tacos, actually.
This is my life. I leave here and I go places, and from the test kitchen, it's a bad thing to do because I smell. And I just smell of food.
It's a good smell,
It is
though.
a good,
delicious.
But you know something? If you didn't know me, you'd think I was kind of a homeless person because you don't really know what that smell is food. You don't connect the dots.
Sell that scent to Estee Lauder or Dior.
It's Tuesday taco scent.
Delicious. So I came into the podcast reeking, and it was Worcestershire sauce. We're making homemade Worcestershire sauce in the test kitchen. And it's a 2 or 3
that
hour
is
process.
very exciting.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be one of these things that, you put a lot of stuff in it. It's garlic and onion and corn syrup, molasses, broth, vinegar. And you just kind of cook it on a simmer for a couple, like 2 or 3 hours, and then you add a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that. And
Tamarind?
No
tamarind?
yet. No, not this one, not this particular recipe. But it's supposed to be one of those things that you can leave in the refrigerator forever. At least that's what this particular recipe is indicating. But we'll see. But, I'm sorry we don't have a...
I would not have detected that as Worcestershire sauce aroma.
Maybe later on when it's sort of right towards the end.
Well,
maybe
that's exciting. I'm looking forward to tasting that. Worcestershire sauce is one of my favorite condiments, I would say. Like maybe the best condiment I have at my house. I use it in everything.
Yeah.
I really do.
It's like soy sauce. A little bit goes a long way in everything. So,
And my sister-in-law makes her homemade version.
Wow.
Hands it out as Christmas gifts
really
every year.
nice.
I never even thought of making it
no,
from scratch.
I'll tell you though, it's in a 7-quart Dutch oven right now, and it's really a lot of stuff.
Lots
so,
to go around for everybody.
well, we'll see. It's supposed to be reduced by half, so it's still bubbling away down there. So to be continued.
Okay. So that's what Diana's been doing. How about you, Chris?
Well, it's not so much what I've been cooking lately, but champagne mangoes are back in season. And
That is your favorite. We know that, right?
My favorite fruit. I love mangoes just in general, but when champagne mangoes are in season, it's my happiest time of the year.
Where are they from?
So
Chile?
the ones that I get I think are mostly grown in Mexico.
Mexico? Mm-hmm.
Certainly like in a tropical place where they'd be grown. But the great thing about champagne mangoes is, number one, they're small. So like one mango can pretty much...
You can eat the whole thing,
You can eat
right?
the whole thing. And they're really not very fibrous. I mean, the flesh of the champagne mango is a lot like a peach.
So not a big pit.
So there's not a big pit, and there's not a lot of like icky fiber stuff that's frequently on the pit of like a Tommy Atkins mango. So like a lot of times I'll like actually scrape the mango after I like get all the flesh off the pit. I'll just scrape it down with my teeth because it's so good. And they're sweet and
Have you
juicy
been
and
using
delicious.
them in anything special, or you just kind of eat them out of hand?
I just kind of eat them out of hand.
Yeah.
I have in the past like diced them and put them in muffins. They're really good at muffins. They're good in scones. And there's actually a couple of recipes that I need to try. I feel like it's in Dory Greenspan's Baking Chez Moi. She has a dessert that involves pureed mango.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a custardy sort of thing that I need to dig that out and try that this year. But yeah, so lots of champagne mangoes.
How about in a clafouti? I bet you it'd be good.
Oh, that would be really good.
Right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You could do cherry and mango.
Yep.
Cherry mango, raspberry mango.
Yum,
Raspberry mango. Yum.
Oh, raspberry mango
Lassies
clafouti.
are always good. That's one of my favorite ways to use them.
What's that?
A lassi.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was thinking that too. I actually love mango lassi. That's really nice.
We have a couple mango lassis on our site, actually, I think, from an Indian menu.
We actually, a few years ago, did champagne mangoes as a try this, and we have a really good champagne mango rice pudding.
Yeah, that's really yummy too.
Yeah.
Rice pudding, that's something that we really don't see around too often, except there's one.
There's a whole rice pudding store in New York.
Really?
Yes. I forget what it's called. But it
Rice
has
to riches.
rice to
What?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm writing that
Oh,
down.
I need to go.
They have since it's down in
It's like
near,
31 flavors of rice pudding.
What?
It's insane.
It's right around the corner from
I haven't been there in
where
years.
it's
But
near Mulberry Street.
How
Yeah.
could I not know this? Okay, writing it down.
They have a very funny sign in their store as well. Anyway, okay, Sarah.
So my kids have been on spring break this week, and I've been trying to come up with projects to keep them busy. And one of the projects was we did some cookie baking with these cookie cutters my mom gave them. And I've never used those stamp type of cookie cutters before that like emboss a pattern. I don't know if Diana or Chris, if you guys have used them before, but
I haven't, but I have some, but I've actually never
I
used
have
them.
some too, but I haven't used them.
yeah, these cookie cutters are dinosaurs, and then the embossing is like their skeleton.
Oh, wow.
And I have to say they were a huge pain to use for cutting out because they just really
Were
were
they
sticking to the
sticking?
dough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to do more of that part than I intended to. But once we baked them and cooled them, and then I just made some royal icing, it made it really easy for the kids to decorate because all they had to do was just pipe the icing into the indentations, and it came out these like gorgeous little dinosaur
I
skeletons.
did see a photo.
So
They
that
looked
was
great.
kind of fun.
So it was a chocolate cookie dough you
Yeah,
used.
we used the Abby Dodge's basic vanilla cutout cookie recipe with the chocolate variation, which is so good.
Yeah. Oh, they looked really fun.
Yeah, they had a lot of fun doing it.
So I was trying to think what I have made lately. And the other night I made this really great fish chowder that was so incredibly easy to make. So I'm just going to tell you how I made it really quick because you don't really need a recipe for it. So I just sauteed up some shallots and carrots and potatoes really quickly. And first I started with a couple pieces of bacon. Then I took the crispy bacon out, then sauteed up the vegetables in the renderings. Added some herbs and some paprika and some pepper, and then just threw in some wine and clam juice, just so like that was covered by like an inch, simmered it 15 minutes, then chunked up some fresh cod, tossed it in. Before I put the cod in, I put a little splash of cream in. Then I added the cod, simmered it 5 minutes, and it was done. I mean, it was done in like 30 minutes. And I have to say, it was really tasty. And so, I don't make chowder a lot. And I mean, I used to long ago, but it used to be sort of a big process to make
I always think of it as a summer thing, even though it's a
hot soup.
Right.
But
because you're
Right.
thinking clam chowder out at
like
a clam
Lobster
shack.
Shack.
Corn chowder.
Corn chowder, yeah.
But it is really good in the winter
corn,
too. It's
yeah, corn would have been really good with this chowder too. So
What did you do with all that broth? Did you
what do you mean?
have bread with it, or
Diana, warmed up some crusty bread and had it with, and that was it.
heavenly bread?
Yeah, Diana likes to serve everything with warm
I
crusty
do.
bread.
I can't help myself.
And more power to you because it is what rounds out the meal many times.
It's that vehicle to sop everything up and not feel guilty.
Yeah, it was good. It hit the spot. Okay, so let's jump into our main topic today, which is talking about cooking in cast iron. Cast iron definitely seems like it's having a bit of a heyday again. It's been around for generations. Certainly, Americans have had a love affair for it off and on over the many years. A lot of people have the pans that have been passed down from their mothers or their grandmothers, or maybe they found them in a flea market. Or maybe they just purchased it. But there's a lot of advantages to cooking to cast iron. One of them being that if it's seasoned and well maintained, it develops a nice nonstick surface. Another is that it doesn't conduct heat, but it does maintain a very high heat. So it's great for searing something like a steak or scallops, because it really retains the heat well.
Right. A lot of times I see people say it conducts heat well, which is like kind of a misconception.
Right,
And
right.
Just that it holds that heat
It's
really
more
well.
that it holds it.
Right.
It's not that it conducts it well. So when you are buying a pan, and whether you're buying it new or you're finding an old one, the thing I find most people are worried about or unsure about is how to, as we call it, season it, which is to give the pan that patina that you get, which makes it the nonstick, gives it that nonstick surface, which is also a thing of beauty when you see a cast iron pan that has that beautiful ebony patina to it. So when we're talking about seasoning a pan, whether it be a new one or one that you found, I suppose now you can buy pre-seasoned ones too. So let me just ask Diana here, what is your favorite way, because I know there's several ways to do it, to season a pan?
Well, I would always wash the pan at first with hot soapy water, and if it's an older pan, same thing, but I would scrub it a little bit if there are any rust spots on it. You want to scrub that off.
Scrub it with like a wire brush?
Yeah, wire brush, or, they have that nice steel wool pad without the soap in it, which is really great because it's really kind of a rough surface. So you want to do that first and then rinse it, all the soap off, and then dry it completely. And then apply a very thin coating of something with a high heat tolerance, an oil with a high heat tolerance, let's say canola oil or grapeseed oil, and just rub the pan inside and out. Not too much oil. I would actually...
not olive oil or something like that.
No, not olive oil. Something with a high smoking point. And not too much oil. So you want to just put a little bit of oil in the pan, and with a paper towel, just rub it all over on the surface of the inside and the outside too. And then you can place it on a rack in the oven, and just also be careful about your oven, because some ovens I think it's safe to just put it on a rimmed baking sheet and set the oven to 350 to 400 degrees. You'd put it upside down on the surface of the rimmed baking sheet, and then you want to bake it for about an hour. So after the hour is up, you want to turn the oven off and let it cool in the oven. Don't even bother opening the door. Just shut the oven and let it cool down. And that's pretty much it. And that's all it takes to season a pan, and you can re-season it this way whenever you need to.
So if you found one that was old and had some rust on it, you would just sort of try to scrape off the rust.
Exactly.
And then try to season it again.
Would you need to do that multiple times for an old pan, or do you think one treatment is that usually enough?
I think as long as you get the rust off, you could season it just once. But, it should be a very smooth, dark surface, I would say. So I wouldn't hesitate to do it multiple times if I needed to.
And that's it, right?
That's pretty much it.
And
then,
why do you put it on a baking sheet?
Well, only because it's upside down in the pans.
Okay.
This way, if any excess oil would drip
right.
into the baking sheet, and you have to be careful of your oven, because some manufacturers will tell you to line the floor of the oven with foil. Some ovens don't like to have anything on the floor of the oven, so it's probably best off to put it on a
baking
cookie sheet or a rimmed baking sheet. You shouldn't put too much oil in the pan. Just remember that. Again, upside down so that any excess oil will drip off into the pan.
Right. And then what's the best way to maintain them? Obviously, because you're cooking in them and things get stuck to them, even like after you season it once, it's probably not going to have a great nonstick finish yet.
It develops over time, and you have to be patient with your cast iron, but it's worth cultivating the seasoning and keeping it seasoned and just taking a little care with it. So basically what we do in the test kitchen is we wash it with hot water, and if it's really ground in, we do tend to use just a tiny bit of soap, and we do scrape the pan with a scraper.
And they do sell scrapers,
yes, they
and
do.
They do sell iron, stiff wire brushes for the pans.
Right.
But so it's a myth. I mean, people always say never use detergent.
I see that all the time. People,
you know what? To me, it's like, it's just, I don't want that film to develop, that oily, sticky film to develop, because then it's just other problems that come along with that. And it starts to smell after a while because the oil becomes rancid if it's too sticky. And it's just not, it's just easier if you're cooking something that's really seared on to just let it soak for a little bit in hot water, and then a tiny bit of soap, and to scrape it clean. And after that, you want to dry it. We put it on top of the stove and on a very low heat to really dry out the pan. We always set a timer for about a minute, just so we don't forget that it's on top of the range. So after that, we let the pan cool down a little bit, and then just a tiny bit of oil, again, on a paper towel. Again, another high smoking point oil like canola or grapeseed oil, just to wipe down the inside, and not till it's oily or greasy, just to give it a nice coating. Nice sheen, right. And actually, we store them stacked into one another, but we put...
You put a liner in between
You know
them?
what I put? Those really heavy-duty, large paper plates. That's what I use to separate each cast iron. We stack them on top of each other, like kind of nested, and each one has one of the heavy-duty paper plates, and that really keeps them very nicely.
So it like absorb if there is any extra oil. It
exactly.
Absorbs it,
That's
right?
exactly what it does.
Yeah. I think the important thing for care is like that the soap is not the cardinal sin, but leaving soapy water soaking
Right.
in it,
Don't
or any
let it
water
soak.
soaking
Right.
is the cardinal sin.
And also drying it, really taking the time to put it on top of the stove and drying it that way.
Right.
Mine just stays on top of the stove. It goes there to dry, and then it just sits there till my next. I mean, I don't put it away. It's so heavy. First of all, that is its drawback.
Well, your pan is probably beautiful. It probably just sits there and you use it a lot.
I use it. I mean, I say daily.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's. I've actually been requested to bring it in for our photo shoots.
Oh,
because
I'd love to see.
It definitely has such a nice patina to it.
These are the things
Is yours
that...
a inherited one, or is it?
I found it. I would love to have some great story, but I don't. I found it in the basement of a house that we purchased many, many years ago.
Oh, that's a great story.
And I do like to
Make a
think
story
that
up.
it has its own little stories of
I bet
like
it does.
grandma's fried chicken and
Is it
Sunday.
a 12-inch, 10-inch? What is it?
12. I don't think it's 14. I think it's 12.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I have to say, when you have one and you get it to like such a great condition like that, it does become quite a little badge of honor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Chris and Diana, do you have interesting stories behind your cast iron pans?
I stupidly threw my mother's away when I was like just a kid.
Because they were probably rusted,
It
right?
was really rusted, and I didn't know any better. And now I kick myself because it was really an old one, and I just didn't know any better. But anyhow.
Every time we talk about cast iron, I feel a little guilty because I don't use my cast iron pan nearly enough.
Especially because you like to bake. So
I do.
I'm surprised that you
and
don't.
There are fun things that you can bake in cast iron.
That's right.
But I actually mostly pull my cast iron pan out when I'm going to sear scallops.
You
Yeah,
know, I
it
have
is
to
great
say,
for searing.
Talking about searing in a cast iron, I almost prefer it over grilling because you get an even sear and you've got all that caramelization across the entire surface
Yes.
Right,
instead of
not just the grill
bars. Right.
yeah.
So it's like, the only thing I say is always watch your heat with the cast iron because, some people put it up till it's screaming hot. You just want to maintain a nice heat level. And so I'd say for that medium high.
Right. I think the other critical point is to give it the time to heat up. It
Yes.
takes longer to get to heat.
Right.
And then it takes longer to cool
But
down.
slowly. I like to bring it up slowly. Don't be in a rush. And it'll give you a really high return for that. And the other thing that's great is that you can put it on any cooking surface: induction, electric, gas, even on the grill. So it's very flexible piece of equipment and it goes a long
It's
way.
just carrying it around.
Right. Well, that too.
The heft. That's the only. I would say that's the only drawback.
That's true. It is really heavy. It is. That's
So
true.
how would you use your cast iron on a grill?
You can just put it off to the side, and whether how you want to do, like, let's say something small, like cherry tomatoes. You want to get a nice kind of caramelization on them, or even chopped onions, let's say, if your recipe's calling for that. Again, I would just say please be very careful because you don't want to forget that the cast iron handle is really, really hot. So I've seen things happen before, and that's the one thing to be wary of. But there's so much you can do with it. And some people even put like sauces in the cast iron.
Yeah, I was just
off to
thinking
the
that
side.
because it maintains its heat so well that if you put it off to the low, where there's a low heat on your grill, it would really stay nice
Right.
and warm.
And we did an article a few years ago about barbecue braising where,
Right.
there's actual Dutch ovens with braising liquids
I
on the
have
grill.
a Dutch oven that's cast iron that I actually bought specifically for the bread that I bake, and it's got a shallow top and a deep bottom. It's a 2-piece. So it's really flexible that you can use the top as a frying pan if you want, but it's very shallow, and the bottom is like a Dutch oven. So the span of the types of equipment that cast iron makes these days is really enormous. So it's something to suit every need. And let's not forget about those grill pans that we put on top of the stove tops when it's too cold to grill outside.
that are cast iron.
That are cast iron. That's also a griddle on one side and a grill on the other. So.
When I am re-seasoning mine, after I use it, I throw in some coarse salt also.
We used to do that too. We used to use coarse salt as a scrubbing agent.
Yes. Well, you put the little bit of oil in, and then I would put salt, and then you rub it, and it sort of gets it into all the little nooks and crannies.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't do. I think we usually reserve that for when it's really been like beaten up. We've really done some hard cooking in it, and we've used that method too. It's actually
so it really
nice.
Kind of helps get it into the pan a little better. I don't know. I always do that. I'm not sure.
It would have a nice abrasive quality.
Yeah.
Do you just use your fingers to rub it in, or
I use like a paper towel.
Paper towel? Okay.
Yeah, or a rag or something. So what is some of your favorite items to cook in cast iron? I mean, we were talking about searing steaks, searing scallops, definitely. I mean, you can cook anything, really. I mean, anything you could on a stovetop and in the oven.
And then oven. That's the other beauty of it. You don't have to worry about, keeping it confined to the top of the stove. You could start something on the top of the stove and then put it in the oven to finish, which is really nice.
It is the original oven-safe skillet.
Absolutely.
Right. So skillet cobblers or something I do a lot, and I do like a skillet chicken pot pie. So the filling is hot before I put the crust on top and put it in the oven.
Of course, there are the skillet cookies.
Skillet cookies.
Look at Chris for that.
It is a wonderful pan to bake in because the bottom gets that nice, even, crusty.
Oh, cornbread, of course.
Yeah.
Can't forget about skillet cornbread.
Right.
Yeah.
Skillet cornbread. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much endless what you can do with it.
So the one thing I don't do a ton of in my cast iron skillet is braising, because I know like acidic ingredients can be damaging to it and can also leach into the food. But Diana, do you have any advice on that? Is it okay to use acidic ingredients a little bit?
Well, you may notice some dark residue on your towels when you're cleaning after using some, working with some acidic items. It's perfectly safe and normal, and it'll go away with regular use and care. But I think you can, but you have to take the trouble again, I think, to clean it up and possibly re-season it. If you're using foods that are relatively acidic, maybe tomatoes. Something like that. I know I did a shakshuka recipe in a cast iron for the website, and I think that was a little bit on the acidic side, and the pan was fine. I mean, it really depends on how well seasoned your pan is to begin with, but
I guess something like shakshuka, it's pretty quick cooking
too,
right?
I wouldn't hesitate to try it out. And again, you just need to pay attention to making sure that the pan is looking the way it should once you're done cooking whatever you're cooking with it.
Right, and I guess the tip is you can't really destroy it.
No, there's no way.
You can always bring it back to its glorious patina again, even if it gets destroyed in maybe a long braise or something.
Right, and don't forget, we haven't really talked about this, but there is a health benefit to eating from cast iron because you get the little bits of iron from it, and you do ingest
food
that.
Absorbs,
and the food, and that's a kind of a healthy thing to cook with. So it's a lot of benefits. So I wouldn't be put off by any recipe. I would definitely use the cast iron pan for everything and anything, and just be conscientious of how you're caring for it, and it'll last you a lifetime or more.
Well, the other one thing I never use cast iron for, and maybe I'm just a wimp, is eggs. I mean, I have never personally. I know some people claim that their cast iron has such a great patina they can cook eggs in it. It's been a disaster anytime I've tried it with a well-seasoned skillet. So I do go to nonstick, like a nonstick coated pan, I should say, for eggs. I haven't attempted eggs in a cast. It wouldn't even dawn on me to do that because I just say eggs, nonstick. It just, it's a solid line between the two.
Unless you've already cooked bacon in yours.
Well, exactly.
skillet. And then you take the bacon out, take some of the
Right
fat
in the
out, and then
bacon
just
fat.
throw the eggs in. That's what we do.
What do you mean take some of the fat out?
See, yours must be really, really well seasoned.
It
then
is
if you
pretty
have
well
eggs in there.
seasoned, I have to say.
Eggs stick like a
I know.
like a mother.
It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
you got to use it a lot. If the more you use it, the more non-stick surface will.
So if you're just investing in cast iron, what's your advice? What's the best way to get into it?
I would say to really
Get a 12-inch skillet.
get a 12-inch because that's a nice standard. You can do a lot of things with a 12-inch. There's a lot of recipes out there right now, and we have a lot of recipes up online, and we've printed a lot of recipes. And I would just explore them first before you start cooking, just to see how easy it is to use, and just be careful of the heat when you're starting out.
They do sell special holders
Yes,
for
they
the
do.
The mitt
for the
Yeah.
handles.
You can just slip it
you
on to
slip
the
it on.
handle.
Silicone?
Right.
So that's a
Yeah.
helpful thing because it does get scorching hot.
It does. It does.
But going back to the investment, I mean, it's really one of the
Cheapest things you could
cheapest
buy.
things you can buy, and even like they're not that expensive new, but you can also find them used at flea
Definitely.
markets. All of my cast iron came
Flea
from
markets.
from a flea market because when my parents got divorced, my mom and dad actually were fighting over the cast iron, so they still use theirs, and I had to get my own, but.
Because it's something worth fighting over.
It
really
is. It was my grandmother's cast iron was very well seasoned.
I mean, any flea market you go to, I mean, there's tons of it. There's usually a dealer that has so many. I mean,
Right.
it's just mind-boggling. So yeah, they're not hard to find.
And like $5. I mean, like
Yeah.
a great cast iron skillet for $5.
That's not a big investment. So maybe that is also a good suggestion because you could go online and buy a shiny new one with a cover and it's pre-seasoned, but keep an eye out so that when you're going to flea markets and tag sales that you're looking for the
Right,
cast
estate
irons.
sales.
Yeah.
And like antique stores.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, yeah,
Sure.
they are. They're antique heirlooms. Some of them, definitely. So also, let me just mention in our April-May issue, we do have a cast iron special section, and in the test kitchen, we do go through how to season and care for your cast iron skillet if you need to have some more information on that. So that pretty much wraps our discussion on cast iron cooking, and now we're going to take some questions from our readers. So here's a few I have in front of me. I've been using a lot of cooking spray lately to cut back on fat. Any tips on how to keep it from getting all over my kitchen?
Absolutely.
Especially if you're spraying it near the stove,
see,
right?
this
It
is a
gets
big
all
thing.
over the place.
I have been in situations where I see some of my testers spraying it, and then they're like the surface of the floor is all like, wow, that's really. So what we usually do now is spray the skillets or cookie sheets or baking pans over the open door of a dishwasher. This way,
Oh,
Bingo.
no greasy film or mist on the sink or the stove top or the counter or, more importantly, the floor, because that stuff is really slippery. You don't have to worry about cleaning it up that way.
that's a great
Good idea. I'd always done it
tip.
in my sink, but that's even better.
I used to do it in the sink until the dishwasher popped into my head. I'm like, well, we're going to wash the dishes anyway, and it's going to be super hot water and wash the film right off. And it's a bigger surface, so it really keeps all the greasy film inside of it. So
Yep, I love the dishwasher trick for
I
that.
know.
That's great.
That's a great tip. Okay, I've tried using a bag of pre-peeled baby carrots sold in a plastic bag for a recipe, and they were really hard and not cooked through. What did I do wrong? Should I have halved them? The recipe didn't say to do that.
So being test kitchen manager, I always say follow the recipe. So if you follow the recipe and the recipe didn't say to have the carrots, that was a good thing that you follow the recipe. But most of the baby carrots sold in plastic bags are way too large to actually be baby carrots. These carrots are actually adult carrots that have been trimmed down to masquerade as babies. But they're way too big to use in recipes calling for true baby carrots, which are much, much thinner. So that's probably why they didn't work in your recipe.
But they market them as baby
They
carrots.
do market them, but you can.
So it's confusing.
Yes, the baby carrots are really small, tiny little things, or
They're really thin.
very thin, and those big, bigger carrots that masquerade as babies are mostly for convenience sake, and I'd say those are great for dips, and
I do wonder if there's something added to them too that prevents them from getting soft
tender.
because they, you open up a bag of those and they last forever in
I
your
know,
fridge.
it's
So I wonder
frightening.
about that.
They could be treated. So if you were using them in a recipe and they were on the large side, you would say definitely cut them in half, maybe, even though the recipe didn't say to.
I'd say I always say follow the recipe, but in this case, if you know that you're buying these baby carrots and these tiny little, they're these short, stubby, but big fat.
Yeah,
I
they're
can't
fat.
describe any other way. They're short and
Fat.
stubby, but big and fat.
And stubby, yeah.
Definitely half or quarter them lengthwise, and that's your best bet. Sarah's laughing.
He's laughing at our baby carrot story. Okay, next question. I've been given several pepper mills as gifts over the years, and I love them all. Do you have any suggestions for using them? I imagine using them for other uses.
Definitely. For example, we have a white pepper mill in the test kitchen that's solely devoted to white peppercorns, but you can do your own mixes and combine, for example, pink, black, green, white peppercorns in a mill. It creates a whole different flavor profile for peppers, peppercorns that is. You can also put coarse sea salt in your pepper mill and grind that too. And lastly, consider a combination of your favorite whole spices like fennel, coriander. You can even create an all-purpose seasoning pepper mill and fill it with a combination of peppercorn, salt, whole spices, and distinguish them from one another by, we usually put a label on them. You can mark the name with a Sharpie and a piece of masking tape and to differentiate them. But yes, pepper mills are great things.
Do you know if whole cumin seeds would work in a, or are they too little?
I think they're too little.
And you would just jam it.
My coffee grinder has pretty much become a cumin grinder because I go through so
Funny.
much.
Although maybe with coarse salt in it and other
That's
spices.
what I was thinking. If you had other stuff mixed in there.
You know what? Many times, if it's a mix of things, I have my own favorite peppercorn blend that I use at home, and I always tend to shake it. Shake the grinder a little bit before grinding, and that kind of keeps things
If you were going
mixed.
to put some of those spices in there, would you maybe toast them first?
You could. I don't see why you couldn't. That would dry them out a little
Yeah,
bit and make
add
them
a little
easier
flavor.
to grind.
That's a good idea. I also put dried chili peppers in
Oh, that's a great idea.
in one of my grinders and use it. That is a great way to kind of add a little punch to something
Definitely.
really quickly. All right. Well, thank you. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. Join us again on our next podcast. For some of the recipes discussed on the show, visit our website, finecooking.com. Also, be sure to join our Fine Cooking Podcast group on Facebook and follow us on Instagram.